Hi, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Sue, and I've got a big smile on my face today because today we're making my absolute favorite Greek dessert. It's not baklava, it's not melimakadina, it's Kourabiedes. And these are those delicious, delicious all butter powdered sugar mounds. They are so good. So tasty, and I just love them, and I've loved them since the time I was a little girl. That's what we're going to do today. Just a reminder, today's recipe and all the recipes that we've been using on this show so far can be found on our website, tweeton.com. Please look us up. You'll find our show's recipes. You'll find opportunities to order tapes of these cooking lessons. You'll find a chance to email me, and believe me, I love to hear from people out in the audience who've been watching the show. And you'll find links to other Greek sites that will give you more insight into the Greek culture and, of course, more recipes. And also, if you've got a special family recipe, traditional recipe that you'd like to share, please tell me about it. Email it to me. I'd love to read it and maybe use it on the show. But on to this fabulous, fabulous cookie. Kourabiedes are a deceptively simple cookie to make, and yet their presentation is absolutely spectacular. Only 4 ingredients. Yep, that's it. 4 ingredients. Here's the number 1 ingredient, and you've got to get it right. It's butter, an entire pound of butter, but it's sweet, unsalted butter. Absolutely has to be unsalted. If it's salted, it'll change the taste of the entire cookie. Second ingredient is 1 egg yolk. 1 egg yolk. Third ingredient, flour. And last but not least, powdered sugar. You'll need at least a 1-pound box, and when I'm making Kourabiedes, I like to keep an extra box on hand because every time I go to serve them, it makes it nice if you can just dust them lightly with a little bit of additional powdered sugar. The first step in preparing the cookies is to actually get the butter ready. And the butter needs to be at room temperature. So I would advise taking it out of the wrappers and taking it out of the refrigerator and letting it sit for a while. And if necessary, stick it in the microwave for just a few seconds, but you do need it soft at about room temperature. This has been sitting out for a while, so it's ready. Just an added reminder, this butter must be unsalted butter, sweet unsalted butter. First step after you've brought it to room temperature is to cream it. So you're going to need an electric mixer, and you want to cream it until the butter is very light, very, very fluffy. And it'll probably take a few moments. This looks just about right. It's nice and fluffy, and the butter is almost white now. It doesn't have the strong yellow coloring anymore. Now to this mixture, or to this butter, I want to add 1 egg yolk. Not an entire egg, but just 1 egg yolk. So I need to separate this 1 egg to get to its yolk. Save the egg white for something else. Add it to an omelet or whatever for breakfast. Add the egg yolk to the butter. And now it's time to add some sugar. It'll be powdered sugar, but just a 1/2 cup. The reason it's just 1/2 cup of sugar in the cookie dough is really quite simple. The final product, the baked cookies, are going to be coated all over with powdered sugar. they don't need additional sweetness inside because there's so much sweetness outside. So just a half cup of powdered sugar, and a little bit more or less isn't going to make any difference. Okay, that's about it. And add that to this mixture. On a personal note, these are my favorite Greek cookies. I love them so much that when I was getting married, I didn't want a wedding cake at all. In the first place, I don't enjoy cakes all that much. I never have. So it was my wedding. I didn't want to have something there that I didn't like to eat. And in the second place, this is my favorite thing. And I wanted to have Kourabiedes because I figured it's my wedding. I want to enjoy myself. Also, I have some wonderful, wonderful memories of snitching dough while my grandma would make this. And in a sense, having the Kourabiedes was sort of symbolic of having my grandma there. Even though she's gone to be with the Lord, I know that she was there with me. The next step is to get all the sugar and the egg yolk mixed in with this fluffy butter. So more work with the mixer and scraping the sides from time to time. I just want to scrape this down, make sure that all the sugar and all the egg yolk is evenly distributed in this massive quantity of butter. And of course, it's the butter that makes these cookies taste so good. I love these cookies for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is definitely the butter. I just love the flavor of butter. And don't you dare try margarine. It will not be the same. And also, I like the cookies because in spite of the powdered sugar coating, they're not very overly sweet. I really don't care for sickeningly sweet things, so this is probably why this is my favorite. This is just a wonderful buttery short cookie with that touch of powdered sugar on the outside. They're just great. Can't say enough good things about them. So keep mixing. Okay, this is done. Everything's been incorporated very nicely. So all I'm going to do now is just remove my beaters and scrape the butter back into the bowl, and now it's going to be time for the flour. Now it's time to add flour. About 4 cups of flour, probably between 4 to 4.5 cups, but no more than 4.5 cups. This cookie is going to be dense, it's going to be rich, but it shouldn't be tough. If you add too much flour, that's what will happen. So anywhere from 4 to 4.5 cups of flour. And I'm using my great flour canister. Anybody who's watched this show knows that I use an old 3-pound can of coffee to keep my flour in. I started years ago, and I actually see no reason to change. I keep it hidden away in a cupboard, and it works. Okay, so there's my first cup of flour into the bowl. Now at this point, I would not use an electric mixer just because the dough is going to get rather stiff and you can't maneuver the mixer. So start using a spoon, and there might even come a point where the spoon's not going to work and you're just going to have to get in there with your hands, your fingers. So make sure your hands are clean. There's 1, there's 2, 3, and 4. You may notice also that this recipe has no leavening in it. It's not needed. At least this is the family recipe that my grandmother used and my mother used and uses today. You don't need to add any leavening. If you feel the need, you want a slightly lighter, fluffier cookie, you could add a half a teaspoon of baking powder, but it's not a necessity. Now, I want to just get in there and stir this up. Also, if you wanted to, you could add a teaspoon of vanilla extract, good quality vanilla extract, to the egg yolk, sugar, and butter mixture before adding the flour. I don't really think it's necessary, but that's something some people might enjoy. Our family recipe is just the 4 ingredients that I listed at the top of the show. However, some of these additions might make it a more interesting cookie for you. I'm doing pretty good here, mixing in the flour with the butter, but I think I'm at the point where I might have to actually just get in here, dig in with my hands. What I'm looking for is a very soft, pliable dough that will hold together if I smush it into a ball, but I don't want to add too much flour because that will make the cookie tough. I have a little story to tell. Years ago, when my mom and dad were celebrating their 50th anniversary, I decided to throw a surprise party for them. And I made different things. Of course, for this one, I ordered a cake. And I made different Greek things, and I wanted to make Kourabiedes. And I was getting started. Up to that point, I'd had lots of experience eating them. I had lots of experience snitching the dough from my grandma and my mom when they were making them. I had some experience shaping the cookies, but I had never actually made the cookies by myself from scratch. So I was at this point. I followed my mother's recipe, my grandmother and my mother's recipe. And I was at this point, and I looked at the dough, and it was so soft. It wasn't like chocolate chip cookie dough. It wasn't like typical sugar cookie dough. It was just so soft. And I kept looking at the amount of flour, 4 cups to 4.5. And I thought, oh my goodness, something's really got to be wrong with this. I mistyped the recipe way back when. And I was getting ready when the doorbell rang. And it was my Aunt Stella, my mother's sister. She came for the party, and she came over to our house the night before as I was getting ready for these cookies. Well, I showed her what I was doing, and I told her what I was about to do. Well, she corrected me and told me, no, this is how this dough is supposed to be. It's supposed to be very soft, very pliable. Stella saved the day. Otherwise, who knows what kind of cookies these would have turned out to be for my mother's party. All that to say this. Don't be worried. This is going to be a very buttery, a very soft, very pliable dough, and that's exactly how it should be. All right, now I'm going to look at this. I should be able to take a ball, and it stays in my hands and makes a ball. This is about right. I could add maybe up to a 1/2 cup more flour, but that's it. If you add more than 4.5 cups of flour, again, the cookies are going to be tough. They'll be like some other kind of butter cookie, but they won't be like Kourabiedes. And they certainly won't be like my family's version of Kourabiedes. All right, I've just gotten in here and kind of smushed everything up just to make sure all the flour is incorporated from the bottom and from the sides. I have a very nice soft dough, and I'm ready to make some shapes. Now, another variation. If you wanted to, you could add a 1/2 cup of blanched chopped almonds or finely chopped walnuts to the cookie dough. And you could add the nuts, either toasted or untoasted. That would be a nice variation. But I like the butter so much, I can't stand having a nut get in my way. I want to just taste all that butter. So that's our family tradition. Just kind of plain, unadorned Kourabiedes. Now it's time to shape them. And I'm preparing my baking sheet. You don't need to grease it, but I am going to put some parchment paper on it just to make sure nothing sticks. Now there are several shapes that are traditional for Kourabiedes. One is just simply a ball. Take a piece of dough, about the size of a walnut, maybe just a little bit bigger, and just roll it into a ball. Now that's not very hard. That's actually the easiest of all the shapes. And just stick it on your baking pan. And you want to keep your cookies, no matter what the shape, you want to keep them about an inch apart. They're not going to fluff up and spread out a whole lot, but just give them about an inch. Now back to this ball. A traditional decoration for Greek Kourabiedes is a whole clove, and you can stud the ball with the clove, and then the clove bakes in. And that is traditional. You'll find that called for in many, many recipes for Kourabiedes. Another shape, take the same amount of dough and just roll it in your hands so that it makes kind of a half moon shape. And that's another very, very traditional shape for the Kourabiedes. Like that, half moon or crescent shape. And again, these can be with or without cloves. Still another shape with just about the same amount of dough. Roll it in your hands, just a little, kind of a little rope. And take the rope and make an S shape, like this. And that too is traditional, and it too can be studded with a clove. And now I'm going to show you the shape that both my grandmother and my mother use. It's really simple. It's similar to the ball. Just get yourself a ball of dough. Flatten the ball slightly. And then just with 3 fingers, just make a little bit of an indentation that brings up the center just a bit. That's it. It's no big deal. I can't help myself. I've got to have a snitch. I really love it. It's so buttery, just a slight sweetness. It's so good. But I got to get back to making more cookies. The cookies need to bake in a 350-degree oven, anywhere from 15 maybe up to 20 minutes. What you're looking for is a very, very light golden brown. They shouldn't be brown, they shouldn't be dark, but just very light golden brown, and they should be cooked all the way through, even though they're still light. That's the reason for keeping the shape small, no matter what particular shape you use. If you make the cookies way too big, then what will happen is the inside will not bake. The outside will get brown and you'll need to take them out, but the inside will still be kind of raw and doughy. The cookies are done. They're ready to come out. I checked them at 15 minutes and left them in a few minutes longer. I love that delicious buttery smell. You can see these are just very, very lightly brown, just a little bit of color around the edges. And the bottom is just a nice golden brown. That's exactly what I want. They're cooked all the way through, but not overcooked. While the cookies are warm, I want to remove them and place them on some paper towels. The paper towels will absorb any of the excess fat, butter, that's oozing out of the cookies right now. So just take a couple sheets of paper towels and carefully place your cookies. Now, the reason I say carefully is because these are very, very delicate. They're very short. They're very buttery. and put them close together. The cookies have cooled off a bit. I put the cookies in this pan because it's time for me to powder them, and the powder is going to get all over the place. So this is going to kind of keep it in check. Now comes the really fun part. You need something to sift with, and to me this is the best. Just one of these strainers, your box of powdered sugar. Just pour a good quantity in, and probably you want to do this on top of a bowl or a plate so that it doesn't get any all over the place. And start sifting as evenly as you can a nice, heavy, thick layer of powdered sugar. And keep the paper towels on. Doesn't that look pretty? It's like snow falling, except for somebody like me who grew up in Southern California. I'm really not all that familiar with snow. All right, now that's just about right for now. And these are ready. They can be served right now as is, and they look very, very pretty. Now you can do a couple of things when serving. Of course, one is obviously put them out on a plate. And they do look pretty, don't they? Another thing you could do when you're giving them away as gifts, or even when you're just serving them in your house, is to put them in little cupcake liners. And that's kind of cute, and that's festive. If you want to give them as gifts, you want to find some sort of airtight container, whether it's a cookie tin or even an aluminum pan, but as long as you try and keep it as airtight as possible. It needs a little care. First thing you want to do is be sure that you line the bottom with some wax paper. Cut it to size. I'm just putting double wax paper on the bottom just for good measure. Now place one layer of cookies. And lightly powder again the cookies. Make sure every surface, exposed surface, is covered. Then another layer of wax paper to separate. And again, another layer of cookies. And another light dusting of the powdered sugar. The reason you keep dusting each layer with additional powdered sugar is that every time you handle the cookies, the powdered sugar gets kind of smushed into the cookie, and the cookie is so buttery that it just forms like a glue. And to keep that lovely white exterior, you need to keep adding a little bit of additional powdered sugar. Now these cookies were simple to make, simple ingredients, but there are a couple pitfalls you have to watch out for when it's time to eat. And the first one I've got to demonstrate to you without my apron. If you're not careful and you don't use a good technique, this is what can happen to you. What you really want to do is grab your napkin or your plate, whatever the cookies are being served on. Hold it out in front of you, away from your clothing. As you take a bite of the cookie, bend your body forward and eat like so. And this way, you should manage to not get powdered sugar all over you. And the second thing you want to be careful about, do not inhale while you're eating these cookies. If you do, that's what will happen. I think you can understand why in our family we lovingly call these cookies chokers. No matter what, These are a traditional Christmas time treat for Greek people, but they are so good and they're so simple to make and they're so impressive to serve. You might want to make them quite often through the year. I just love them, and I know if you try them, they'll become a favorite too.